Have you ever been treated like garbage inside your own home? You know, that place where, theoretically, you're supposed to feel safe, respected, even loved? Yeah. For me, it was anything but that. It became the daily stage for my humiliation, where day after day I was reminded that I wasn't a priority. Quite the opposite, actually. She got everything. The bedroom, the bed, the closet, the fan, the mirror, even the curtains. Every item seemed to silently say, "You don't belong here." It was like each part of the house carried a reminder of how disposable I was. And me, I got the living room couch. That old, stiff, uncomfortable couch. There was no privacy, no peace. It was where I slept, ate, cried. And no, this wasn't an emergency solution. It wasn't temporary. That was my home for 3 long years. 3 years where time crawled and hope slowly faded away. But life changes. Sometimes slowly, sometimes in a brutal flash. And it changes especially when you decide you're done settling for crumbs. When you learn, through pain and effort, to turn suffering into fuel. That's exactly what I did. I took every tear, every sleepless night, every silent moment full of contempt, and I used it as momentum. Today, I open the door to my mansion. Yes, mine. And when the breeze touches my face out on the balcony, I smile. A quiet smile, but one, if full of history. The kind of smile that says, without needing words, "Now the room is all mine." It all started when my parents got divorced. I was only 9 years old. At the time, I didn't really understand what the end of a marriage meant. I just heard the arguments, the muffled shouting from down the hall, and the heavy silence that filled the house afterward. Suddenly, what used to be a family turned into 2 halves that no longer fit together, and I, a confused child, was stuck in the middle of that crack. Just a kid, trying to figure out where he belonged in a world that had suddenly become too big and too cold. My mom got custody of my older sister, the princess of the house. She was always treated like she was special, untouchable. She was my mother's pride, the one who received all the affection, attention, and praise. And me, I stayed with my dad. At first, it didn't seem so bad. I like to think that he needed me just as much as I needed him. We had a routine, simple but ours. For a while, I held on to the idea that we were rebuilding something. But then came the news. He had met someone else. He was in love. And with that came the plan to move to another city, start a new life with new priorities. A life where, apparently, there was no room for me. He sat me down and told me in a rehearsed kind of tone that it would be better for me to go back and live with my mom and sister. It'll be better for you, a more stable environment, more familiar. But what I actually heard was, there's no place for you here anymore. And more than that, I heard something that would haunt me for years. I was just a piece to be moved around at someone else's convenience. I went back to that house with a backpack on my shoulders, worn-out shoes, wrinkled clothes, and a tight, aching heart. I remember standing in front of the door, taking a deep breath, trying to find a spark of hope. A warm memory that would convince me I still had a place there. But as soon as I stepped inside, I knew I wasn't welcome. There were no smiles, no hugs, just a sideways glance, quick, impatient, the kind of look you give something you hoped wouldn't come back. The house was the same, but everything else had changed. My sister was already settled in the bedroom we used to share, and she made it clear that room was hers now. She shut the door as if closing a chapter. My mom, without even looking at me, properly said, "You can stay in the living room, right?" She said it like she was doing me a favor, like giving me a spot on the couch was an act of kindness. She didn't even bother to ask if I was okay, if I needed anything, if it hurt. They just threw a thin blanket over the couch and gave me a crooked, lumpy pillow, and that was it. Problem solved. The living room became my bedroom, my shelter, my punishment. I lived there, and without privacy, without comfort, without a voice. It was where I slept, studied, cried. It was where I overheard their conversations through the walls, the laughter coming from the bedroom, the family dinners I was no longer part of. I felt like a guest who had overstayed his welcome. Every sleepless night, every morning with aches in my body and a heaviness in my chest, carried the same silent but brutal message. You're the extra, the disposable one, the one left behind. With time, that message settled into me like truth. I started to believe it, that maybe I really was a burden, a mistake, someone who was only still there because no one knew what else to do with him. But what no one knew, not even me at the time, was that all of it was shaping me. In silence, through the discomfort, I was becoming stronger. The pain that nearly broke me was slowly becoming resistance. The lack of love became a hunger for dignity. The neglect became fuel. And even though I didn't yet know how, deep down, I held on to one belief. Someday, all of this would be transformed. My sister had everything. Every corner of her room looked like something out of a fancy store window, expensive perfume on the dresser, neatly organized boxes with jewelry, creams, accessories. Her room was always clean, fragrant, decorated. The lights from her vanity mirror stayed on like a stage, reflecting a life of comfort and protection. And me? I had the living room light that stayed on all night, the loud hum of a standing fan that made more noise than wind, and the mosquitoes that bit my face while I tried to sleep on a couch too short for my body. Every sleepless night left more than just bite marks. I woke up feeling like I didn't even exist while she got ready to go out, heels on her feet, makeup on her face, perfume in the air. I sat there, crammed between crooked cushions and heavy thoughts. She got gifts, celebrated milestones, had her photo taken with pride, and me, I just wanted a quiet place, just a little peace so I could study, so I could try to dream of a better life. But even that seemed like too much to ask. The TV was always too loud, the shouting in the living room, always at full volume. Every noise was a reminder. You don't have a place here, you're temporary, you're extra. Over time, I stopped trying to explain. The few times I tried to speak up, I was talked over. My words got lost in the complaints, in the priorities of others, in their disinterest. So I stopped. I started keeping everything inside. I swallowed my pain, my questions, even my hopes. I didn't complain, didn't raise my voice. I just watched. I learned how to be invisible, and in that invisibility, I saw more than people realized. Every gesture, every preference, every intentional silence, I noticed it all, and each injustice, each moment of being left out became an invisible brick in my mind. A wall started to rise inside me. A wall made of pain, yes, but also of resistance, and that wall didn't isolate me from myself. On the contrary, it protected me. It reminded me, with each new brick, that I couldn't accept this forever. Slowly, two words began to echo inside me with such force that they became my compass, my shield, my sword. Never again. Never again depend on anyone for the bare minimum. Never again settle for crumbs. Never again shrink myself to fit into spaces never meant for me. Never again beg for attention, for respect, for dignity. Never again pretend everything's okay when it's tearing me up inside. That pain shaped me. Rejection became quiet strength. Discomfort became fuel. While no one was paying attention, I grew on the inside, not in height, but in awareness, in determination, in promise. I made a vow to myself, one day I'll have my own room. One day I'll close my own door. One day, the silence will be mine and mine alone. One day, I'll walk into a home where every corner says, "You belong here." And more than that, one day, I'll look back and say with pride, it was from the depths of that couch that I rose. The turning point didn't start with a miracle. There was no divine light, no message from the universe, no one extending a helping hand. It began with something much simpler, and at the same time powerful. An old notebook with a scratched screen and a battery that only worked when plugged in. I borrowed it from school. No one really cared about it, but to me, it was everything. At that time, I studied at night. I spent the entire day trying to find odd jobs, whatever came. Up carrying boxes, cleaning yards, handing out flyers, taking care of dogs. Anything that gave me a few coins and kept my mind busy. Because the truth is, when you don't really have a home, time becomes an enemy. Thinking hurts, remembering hurts, and sleeping, sometimes that hurts even more. It was in that scenario, between a school shift and another poorly paid job, that I started researching. I typed into Google something millions must have typed before me: how to make money online. Hope was minimal, but it was all I had. I spent months immersed in questionable videos, false promises, and forums full of people as lost as I was. I fell for scams. I did tasks that paid pennies for hours of work. I signed up on platforms promising quick success, sold courses that no one bought, tried filling endless forms, all for scraps, all in the hope of finding a way out. But there was one thing on my side: time. I had plenty of time, because those who sleep on the couch rarely really sleep. It was during one of those sleepless nights, with my face illuminated only by the screen's light, that a random video appeared. It talked about digital marketing, a topic I had never even heard of until then. Curious, I clicked. From that moment, a door opened a little. After digital marketing, I discovered this thing called dropshipping. I spent hours reading about it. Then came copywriting, a fancy name I could barely pronounce, but that seemed to hide something valuable. I spent night after night trying to understand it all. It was like I had fallen into a new world where knowledge mattered more than appearance, more than your last name, more than the zip code where you were born. There, no one knew I slept in the living room. No one knew my office was the kitchen table at 3 in the morning. It was just me and the content, just me and the possibility. After a lot of studying, I built my first online store. I did everything with the utmost care. I thought I was ready. I was wrong. Failure. I tried. Another. Changed everything. Researched more. Watched all the videos again. Failure, but I didn't stop. Something inside me screamed that I had to keep going. On the third try, with fear, insecurity, and almost no expectations, it happened. First sale, 47 durazals. I remember the exact amount as if it were tattooed on my memory. When I saw the notification in my email, I went straight to the school bathroom, locked the door, sat on the toilet seat, and cried. I cried silently. I cried for everything. For the sale, yes, but mainly for everything it represented. It wasn't just money. It was proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy for believing. Proof that even without a bed, without a room, without support, I could. That was where everything truly began. I transformed the sofa into my office. I didn't have a desk, a comfortable chair, or a special corner to work, but I used what I had. I took the old ironing board that was forgotten in the corner of the house and placed it next to the sofa. It was improvised, fragile, but it was my sacred space. There I spent hours studying, dreaming, and planning. On the wall I stuck colorful post-its with goals that might seem crazy to many, but to me were like lights at the end of the tunnel. Each one represented a challenge, an objective, a promise made to myself. They were daily reminders to never give up, to keep fighting even when everything seemed against me. While my sister enjoyed the comfort of the room that was hers alone and slept until noon, I had already been awake for hours. The silence of early morning was my ally. I took every moment to study English, dive deep into paid traffic, learn the secrets of persuasion, and be fascinated by the power of storytelling. How simple words could turn into magic. Every click, that came into my store was a beat of hope in my chest, a small sign that my effort was not in vain. Gradually, orders began to grow, and with them, my confidence as well. It was a slow process, full of ups and downs, but it was happening. At first came the small sales, which might seem insignificant to many, 47 or 89ers, but for me, they were huge victories. Each one showed me I was on the right path. Then came larger amounts like 370, until one weekend I reached what seemed like a distant dream, $1,245. With this new reality, I felt I needed to take a more serious step. I opened a CNPJ to formalize my business, showing myself that this was no longer a hobby or a passing attempt, but a real and sustainable project. I created an account at a digital bank to separate personal finances from business ones, understanding the importance of organization and professionalism. Finally, the moment I had long awaited arrived. I quit the supermarket where I used to pack groceries. I pretended that I didn't need that job anymore, but inside, my soul screamed, never again. Never again accept a life where I was invisible. Never again accept being put second inside my own home. Never again settle for crumbs when I knew I deserved the whole feast. Never again accept less than I knew I could achieve. This decision wasn't easy. There was fear, insecurity, doubts. But the will to change surpassed all that. I wanted more for myself. I wanted to build a future where my voice was heard, where my effort was recognized, where I could look in the mirror and be proud of what I saw. And there, in that moment, sitting on my improvised sofa office, with courage beating strong in my chest, I knew this was just the first of many victories to come. I had taken the first step to leave behind everything that limited me and embrace the life I always dreamed of. The final turning point came in a way I never could have predicted. A simple, sincere video I recorded, sharing a business tip that had worked for me. I didn't expect it to explode like it did, but within days, it went viral. 3 million views, 3 million people watching what I had to say. A number that seemed impossible for someone who, not long ago, barely had a place to sleep properly. With that explosion of reach, thousands of followers started coming in. People who wanted to know more about my story, who wanted to learn, who believed in my journey. It was a moment when everything started to make sense. I wasn't alone anymore. My voice, my experience were impacting lives. I took advantage of that moment to launch my own online course. It wasn't something thrown together. It was the result of all my learning, sleepless nights, trials, and errors. The course contained everything I wished someone had taught me when I was starting. Digital marketing strategies, sales, copywriting, time management, focus, everything that helped me go from nothing. In 18 months, my revenue surpassed what my mother had earned. In 10 years of hard work, it was a huge leap, a radical change, not only in my bank account, but in my mind, my self-esteem, my way of seeing the world, and my place in it. And then came the moment I had dreamed of since I was a child, visiting houses to choose my own. Not just any house, the house that would be a symbol of my victory. I went through neighborhoods, toured many homes. I looked for comfort, space, a place that had my face and could hold all my dreams. After much searching, I found the perfect house. 7 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, a pool, master suite, everything I never imagined I could have one day. It was the symbol of everything I had overcome, all the pain, all the struggle, all the sleepless nights. But what touched me the most was the living room. A huge, spacious room with a leather sofa so beautiful and large, it seemed made just for me. It wasn't a place to sleep because I finally had a bed that was all mine. But it was a place to remember every night I spent on that old sofa, how impossible it seemed back then. To never forget that it all started there, in that forgotten corner of the living room, where no one believed I could go far. When the keys to the house finally arrived in my hands, I felt a mix of emotions: joy, pride, gratitude, and a huge desire to show those who doubted that I had won. I took a picture of that leather sofa, wrote a caption, and posted it in the family group chat. From the living room sofa to my own mansion, thanks for not believing in me. The silence that followed was heavy, but not the bad kind. It wasn't anger or resentment. It was the silence of late recognition, surprise, shock. Those words spoke louder than any argument could. I smiled, looking at my phone screen, knowing that message was much more than a simple caption. It was my victory, living proof that even when the world turns its back on you, even when you're put down, even when no one believes in you, it's possible to turn pain into fuel. It's possible to turn failures into strength, to turn an old sofa in the living room into an empire. And there, at that moment, I felt my place was finally where I had always dreamed. In control of my life, master of my destiny, living my best version. Today, each room in my house represents something that was denied to me. Privacy, respect, comfort, peace, but I hold no grudges, because it was contempt that taught me to value the impossible. If you're watching this and feel like you're on the sofa of your life, where no one sees you, no one supports you, no one believes in you, know this: if this story touched you in any way, comment below. From the sofa to the mansion, I will reply to every single one. And if you're still on your sofa, know that this channel is your room, a space for those who dream big. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and follow me, because the next story of overcoming could be yours. This is exactly the starting point for the unstoppable. Turn humiliation into motivation. Turn the sofa into a springboard, and one day, when they open the door to your mansion, the silence of those who doubted will be the sound of your victory.